So anyone who joined us on yesterday's programme may have seen the reaction to the interview that I gave yesterday, was given to me yesterday by Gail Bradbrook. Now, I don't know if you know who Gail Bradbrook is, but she is one of the founders of Extinction Rebellion. And as you know, Extinction Rebellion have closed all of central London once again. They've caused chaos to people like you and I, just trying to go about our business, trying to maybe get back to doing a bit of shopping, getting back to some normality after the worldwide pandemic we've all been suffering with. And Gail Bradbrook, as a member of Extinction Rebellion, chose to give an interview with us here on talkRADIO regarding the action that they're taking. And many of us who agree that there is an issue with climate change, some of you I realise don't. I happen to agree that climate change is a problem. But I think many of us get annoyed with what I was calling yesterday climate crits. This is the people who are apparently endorsing us changing our behaviour over the climate, but are hypocrites themselves. And when I spoke to Gail yesterday during the interview, you will have remembered her revealing to me, perhaps you won't, perhaps you're hearing this for the first time, that despite the climate crisis, despite her closing central London with her Extinction Rebellion extremists, despite all of this and the fact that they are protesting fossil fuels, she drives a diesel. She drives a gas-guzzling old diesel car, a vehicle that she claims that she has to still drive because she lives in a part of the UK, Gloucestershire I think it was, that doesn't have brilliant public transport, and she has to drive her children a couple of miles to play sports. Well, I thought that the whole point of this was that we're all being encouraged to ride bicycles to do that sort of thing. And that also she did take an 11,000 mile flight, which was to the Costa Rica, and that was because she needed to have a medical procedure done, which we subsequently find out was actually so that she could take psychedelics. Now look, Gail is not here to defend herself at this moment, but she has chosen to send a tweet in reaction to the car crash interview that she gave yesterday, which has subsequently made international headlines. Now, before I give you my reaction to the tweet she sent about me, once again personally attacking me, as she did in the interview yesterday, I certainly didn't get personal with her other than to critique her behaviour, let's remind ourselves of my encounter with Gail Bradbrook on yesterday's programme. What car do you drive?
But it was claimed to be a really green car.
What is it?
At the time when I bought it, I'm one of those people who just don't like cars, so I can't remember. But it is a diesel car. It's not cool. But basically,
diesels are terrible.
Convert these cars. You can convert them, but you need money to do that. And what I was thinking was, wouldn't it be great if some of us, I'd be willing to do it, could give our cars into community ownership, get them converted to electric. So if anybody wants my car and they can pay for it to be converted to electric and other people can share it, they're very welcome.
But I don't want to live in a life of...
I can't get my kids to sports fixtures. They're both into football and rugby. I do lots of lift sharing, but I can't get them there because we don't have buses that run including.
Firstly, I don't.
Some of the things are systemic issues, aren't they?
But I don't want to live in a world where I have communal use of a car, firstly. But secondly, aren't those the sacrifices we have to make? Unfortunately, your children are going to have to play their sports slightly more locally rather than you getting into a diesel.
No, they are playing them locally, love, but it's a very hilly place, and even just a few miles, you can't get there on an electric bike.
But we're being told here in London that active travel has got to be within 15 minutes. No, of course it's personal. How can you say it's not personal? You're asking me and you're asking politicians to change my life personally, so of course it's personal. And if you drive a diesel, respectfully, if you take a holiday that takes up 11,000 air miles, and then you're asking me or asking politicians to enforce rules that make me change my life, of course I'm going to say you're a hypocrite.
Well, you know, you can go the hypocrisy route all you like. Every person is trying their best to do what they can in this system also needs systemic change. We have to have a functional public transport system, for example.
Bicycles?
You know, we should be able to do our health issues in the UK, not have to go overseas for them. But individuals can only make so much change.
So that's what she had to say. She also then went on when I laboured the point about her being a hypocrite and asking us to change our personal behaviour and to lobby governments to ask us to change our personal behaviour. For instance, she went on to suggest some sort of carbon ration per person, i.e. each person gets a carbon ration, and once you use it up, you can no longer do anything that involves carbon. That means flying anywhere, driving anywhere, which of course is personal behaviour. Once I went on to labour the point that her personal behaviour has not changed in as much as that she drives a diesel, she went on to call me a boring interviewer, and that basically focusing on personal behaviour was not the way forward. We sort of went round in circles, so in the end we decided to call it quits. Now, that interview has now made international headlines. It's gone absolutely everywhere. It was one of the most read stories on the Mail Online last night because, of course, what it's done is, just like when we have our London mayor who decides to drive in a 3-car convoy 4 miles to walk his dogs, when we have someone who is a founder of Extinction Rebellion telling us that this chaos they're creating we need to put up with because it's the only way to convince those in power to bring in policies like carbon rationing that are going to affect our freedoms, when those organisers can't even make the change themselves to drive one of them lesser polluting vehicles. I'm not even saying she should drive an electric car, though I would have thought that she would do. But I'm amazed that she would have thought that driving a gas-guzzling diesel would have been appropriate before then going and protesting in central London. Surely, if you're that worried about a climate catastrophe, the first thing you would do is change your mode of transport from being the most polluting to the least. How moronic do you have to be to go and protest in central London against fossil fuels and drive a diesel? Sorry, is it just me? But of course, if you're going to endorse that sort of behaviour, you shouldn't be a hypocrite. It starts with the individual. We're all told that. We're all told making those little personal changes and personal sacrifices is the way to fight climate change. Well, I tell you then, don't drive a diesel. Worse, don't drive an old diesel that's pumping out emissions like there's no tomorrow. It is absolute hypocrisy. And she may have said it was personal. Of course it's personal. Of course it's personal. Because we are constantly told it's about personal responsibility. We are actually being put under personal inconvenience by their protesting. So of course it's personal. And it's just unbelievable to me that that kind of question would have been a surprise to her. And it's unbelievable to me that not only did she not seem to be in any way remorseful for driving a diesel, she suggested that someone else should pay for it to be converted. And she suggested that the system was to blame. And she suggested that I was the one at fault for asking her about it. Well, she's now gone on to tweet about me today because obviously thousands of you have retweeted the interview. Thousands of you are as furious as I was that one of these organisers can't even get their own house in order first before trying to inconvenience our lives. And this is what she's had to say. She's retweeted the interview and called me a right-wing elite. She said right-wing elites with snouts in the fossil fuel trough field attack dogs like Cristo on talkRADIO to promote climate delay. He loses the argument, so tries the classic move to trivialise and personalise with divide and rule tactics. She also goes on to say, I thought you looked quite happy at the end, Cristo, like you enjoyed a good workout. Peace and love, brother. I mean, Gail, do you know how journalism works? When you are someone who is a protester, when you're someone who is a campaigner, well, the job of journalists is to hold your position to account. It's to hold what you are saying to account. It is to put your views and put ultimately your actions under scrutiny. Otherwise, you have no credibility. And unfortunately, what happened for you, Gail, and I can tell that you're annoyed, and I can tell it's easy for you to say I'm boring, easy for you to say I'm a right-wing elite, whatever that is. And the reason you're saying that is because you were humiliated. I exposed your lack of credibility. You had no credibility after you spoke to me, and the reason is because you have not started to make the changes at home that you expect other people to change, and that's annoyed you. I get that that's annoyed you. You looked foolish. Of course you looked foolish. You looked foolish when you started to personally insult me. You looked foolish when it became clear that not only did you drive your diesel, but you expect someone else to sort out the problem. Now, I suggest kindly that Extinction Rebellion, those people who advocate for this sort of thing, get their own house in order first. It's not just Extinction Rebellion that needs to do that. It's Sadiq Khan, our mayor, who needs to do that, who needs to stop being driven around in a 5-litre Range Rover to go a couple of miles to walk his dogs when he expects that kind of journey for me to take to now be restricted. It's Alok Sharma, our climate change secretary, who takes 60 flights in 6 months. It all starts with that personal behaviour. And if you can't get your head around that, I'll tell you something, don't do interviews. You just make yourselves look stupid and you lose all credibility. And hey, today it was me that was the person, or yesterday it was me was the person that exposed your lack of credibility. Tomorrow it might be someone else. So I suggest if you expect me to make those personal changes, you get your house in order. And I'm sorry you were humiliated, and I'm sorry that you have to see me as someone who's a right-wing elite. I don't even know what that is. I'm just someone who worries that these sorts of problems in the world, and the world is full of many problems, are going to be used to restrict my freedoms and to tax me. Now, what I would have hoped you'd have done was reassure me that wouldn't be the case. What you ended up doing is showing yourself as a massive hypocrite, because that's what you are. And that's all I have to say.